You are competing with hundreds of millions of hours of content every day. So how are you going to stand out amongst that? The game for all of these companies is consumption hours. They don't want you to leave the platform. And I'm saying, okay, I've got a creator here who has 10 million followers. They have converted 200,000 people to a podcast. Yeah, I think they can get someone to pay $6 to subscribe to your streaming platform. And I think they'll watch the show, and then I think they'll go on to watch other shows on your platform. We can do this, and it will work. That trailer got 3.2 million views and took the account from 0 to 90,000 followers in 24 hours.
Michelle Melky, welcome.
Thanks, Julie. Thank you so much for having me.
You're the Creative Director of Amplify, which is a global creator content industry, and you also recently made the VNT Under 30 shortlist. Super impressive. I'm really excited to talk to you about the Gen Z audience and the future of storytelling. Let's start with the big picture. What does Amplify do, and what does a day in your office look like? Because you are kind of a reasonably new business model for our industry.
We're a creator-led business, so everything we do comes back to creators. So we don't use the word influencer. We only refer to them as creators. So we have 3 essential business models that all work together really well. So the first is talent management. So we actually represent content creators at Amplify as agents and managers. It gives us a very unique perspective into the mind of a creator that not a lot of other agencies or production companies have, because we talk to them every day. We help shape their careers. We help them get their brand deals, but we also help them launch unique products like podcasts or books or live touring. So I personally get to talk to creators every single day about their fears, their troubles, their ambitions. So that has really shaped my opinion on how to approach the creator economy. So that's part 1. Part 2 is campaigns. So we do thousands of brand campaigns that are led by creators. So we have done work for everyone from, P&G's, the Unilevers of the world, Estee Lauder, Pepsi, Warner Brothers, Netflix, like kind of any brand you can think of, essentially. It's sometimes easier to say brands we haven't worked with in the campaign space. And that's a global part of our business. This is a global conversation, and Amplify is definitely a global agency. So we do these campaigns significantly across APAC. We have more employees in Asia than we do Australia, but we've executed campaigns in really remote locations. I think we just did one in Saudi Arabia, like random places that you wouldn't imagine to do an influencer or creator campaign, but we do that as well. And then the third part of our business is production. So we have made podcasts, we have made web series, we run TikTok accounts for brands like Warner Brothers, Tinder Australia, Blackmore's Australia, and various others. So we are shooting, editing, writing, on set, getting our hands dirty every day. So you can see how those 3 business units work together, and they're all really centralized by the creator.
I think it's really important that you talk about the difference between the influencer and the creator in terms of describing this generation of storytellers. Because influencer feels like it was an early on incarnation of what was happening. And now these people really are creators, and they are becoming an increasingly central part of the entertainment industry as well. So many changes have happened over the last few years. What are the key changes that you've seen happening in terms of how we engage with entertainment?
That's a really good question. I think there are several key ways we've seen the change over the last few years. It's funny to now talk about TikTok in this way, because I already feel like we're starting to enter the next phase of TikTok and what it has brought in. But if you want to look back, just already 5 years ago now, since the pandemic in 2020, obviously the rise of short form vertical content has dominated the last 5 years and has dominated the conversation around consumption of entertainment. So the general consensus is that attention spans are getting shorter, videos are getting shorter, which is true. Videos are getting shorter, and TikTok has had a huge role to play in that. We've then seen, obviously, the massive influence that's had on other companies like Meta and Google with the launch of Reels and YouTube Shorts. They're bringing their competitors into that market. X has prioritized video more and more as well the last few years. And now even Spotify is prioritizing video long and short form. But I think even now already, just a couple years into that life cycle, we're still seeing massive consumption hours on a platform like YouTube and a love of long form entertainment, whether it's your 1.5 hour long Netflix drama or a 3 hour long movie at the box office or a 2 or 4 hour long YouTube video essay. I still think people are really enjoying long form content. So this idea around short attention spans, I don't really subscribe to that. It really comes down to like how you're consuming, which is what you're asking, right? If you're consuming on your phone on the way to work, if you're going to the movies, if you're settling for a binge, that's going to dictate what kind of content you consume on what device and on what platform. But I think habits are just diversified a little bit more.
And when you talk about the next wave of TikTok that you're seeing, that's a very tempting question. I just need to know, what are you seeing in the future?
Longer videos. I think that's what we're seeing is when I did my first project on TikTok, it was 1 minute was the hard and fast limit. It was actually technically 59 seconds. You had to be 59 seconds. And we were back in those days shaving frames off the videos to squeeze them into 59 seconds. But then they introduced, I think, 2 or 3 minutes, then 5, and now 10. The game for all of these companies is consumption hours, viewing hours. They don't want you to leave the platform. So the longer you can stay on one video and the next video, the better for them. You know what's really popular on TikTok is Bluey. Entire episodes of Bluey on TikTok, which obviously illegal, and I don't support that because I support Bluey. But people will rip entire movies and then put them on TikTok in 20 by 10 part videos. And someone will watch all of those back to back on TikTok instead of going on a streaming platform and watching it. They'll watch it cut up into 10 little parts. And each part's about 10 minutes long. So I think we're definitely seeing creators learning that as well and not being afraid to post a 5 or 6 minute long video because they know that people, if it's a good video, it's a good piece of content, people will watch a whole 5-minute long video.
The changes just keep on happening and they're going to keep happening. We haven't arrived anywhere. We're on an ongoing journey.
Yeah.
One of the terms you use a lot is Creatorsphere. What exactly is the Creatorsphere and what makes someone successful within that?
We call it the Creatorverse. It's our way of positioning the creator economy. So creator economy is a pretty common phrase that people use. It's money that flows through creators. But the Creatorverse is all the pillars within that ecosystem. So to us, it's really defined by 3 key elements. The first is obviously the creators at the center of the Creatorverse. And the 2 sort of things spinning around that creator are audience and brands. So for me, like the most important part of the Creatorverse, any creator, if that's what your ambition is to be, it is audience every single time. That is the thing you really need to understand first and foremost. There's everything else afterwards, like platform and making your content engaging and clickbait and all that stuff you hear all the time. But the center of being a creator is understanding who you're speaking to and understanding who's enjoying your content. You are competing with hundreds of millions of hours of content every day, not just the existing content, but the new content. It sometimes can feel like just like a garbage chute of stuff flowing through the internet at all times. So how are you going to stand out amongst that? And I think what we've seen creators learn and what we've learned in the last, you can really say now, 10 years of the creator economy existing is niching down, narrowing down what your audience is a good thing. You don't need to be something for everyone. In fact, if you're something for everyone, it's very difficult to build a meaningful audience and a meaningful platform. But if you know who you want to speak to and you can niche down into that, you're going to have people who are a lot more invested in what you do. So brands are recognizing that media dollars are moving onto these platforms, that the creators control these platforms more or less. Like they are the platform. There is no platform without a creator. So they need to be putting their brands associated with these creators who have built these really strong and loyal audiences. It's always fascinated me how hard of a concept that can be to grasp sometimes for traditional marketers, because in my head, it is no different from a celebrity endorsement. It is no different from Zendaya being the face of Louis Vuitton or from Adam Driver being the face of Burberry or whoever. It's the exact same idea. It's just delivered on the internet. It is like a celebrity endorsement, but it's just done a bit differently with creators.
And you were part of the first TikTok web series to go viral, Love Songs. How did you do that? What did you learn? How did that feel?
Felt awesome. Felt great. I remember everything about Love Songs and the day it went viral. It was late 2019. TikTok was in Australia, but wasn't as nearly as popular as it is now. It was still very much a platform dominated by teenage girls. Me and Haley Adams and Elise Adams had this kind of feeling of, if we make a web series designed for teenage girls on a platform where they are participating in the culture every single day, most likely those 2 things are going to connect and they're going to see it. And it only needs to be like good enough for TikTok. We didn't have a budget. We didn't have funding. It was paid for out of pocket. It was super ultra cheap. We made it between the 4 of us. Like it was a 4-person crew, which is me, Haley, and Elise. And Haley's boyfriend, who's a cinematographer. So the four of us made it together. And I guess what we were betting on, and the bet paid off, which is that we made something that was slightly higher production value than what TikTok was serving at the time. We made very clear clickbait opening shots. So the first couple seconds of every episode was clickbaiting and engaging. And we also leveraged the unique tools of TikTok. So TikTok has music on it. They have various music licensing agreements with various record labels. So you're able to legally, sometimes not so legally, use commercial music on the platform. So that's why it's called Love Songs. That was the conceit of the entire show, is to have a love song in every single episode. TikTok let us do that because they had the agreements with the record labels and we were able to use the song on TikTok. And essentially we started to roll out some content. We put out some trailers. They weren't getting any numbers. And we were kind of like, we were wrong. It's not going to work. And I just had this feeling. I was like, no, it is going to work. Let's take our 1 minute, quote unquote, traditional trailer. And we just took the first 15 seconds of the trailer. We did not recut it in any way. Exact same 15 seconds, but we just dropped the other 45 seconds. We put that on TikTok. We also paired it with the song Blinding Lights by The Weeknd, which was the #1 most streamed song of 2020. It had just come out when we used it. So we were on the precipice of a huge cultural song, which was Blinding Lights. We had 15-second snappy trailer. And this is where fate comes in. To All the Boys I Loved Before 3 came out the same day as this video. Our male and female lead looked a lot like the male and female lead of To All the Boys I Loved Before. Partially on purpose, because that was one of our key references, one of my favorite movies and series. We were trying to do a kind of like Netflix on TikTok vibe. That trailer got 3.2 million views and took the account from 0 to 90,000 followers in 24 hours. Even by today's TikTok standards, that's like pretty good. That's like good numbers, good views, good engagement. And all the comments were about, where do I watch this? How do I watch this? This is TikTok Premium. I get this for free. This is like Netflix on TikTok. And we were like, yes, tick. We did it. And then we started to post the episodes from that point onwards. So we posted 1 episode a day at the same time every day. We were sort of aiming for US time because our stats were showing that Americans were watching it. And we actually got to a stage where I don't think I've ever done this again, to be honest, but we trained the audience to expect the episodes out at the same time every day. That is not how TikTok works. TikTok is not appointment viewing. It's not Sunday at 5 p.m. I watch the blog. It doesn't work like that. You go on when you want and you just passively scroll on the For You page. That's how it works. We had people who had followed the account every day for 20 days coming onto the account at 1 p.m. and saying, where's today's episode? Why haven't you posted it yet? And that to me was still one of my greatest achievements. I just couldn't believe that we had people liked the content well enough, which is great, but they knew what time, they knew where it was, and they came asking for it. What more can you ask for as a producer or a filmmaker to have an audience that was that interested in a video that goes for 1 minute? They're the 1 minute episodes where very little happened. It was just a basic rom-com of 2 people meet, enemies to lovers, they kiss, whatever. That was the story. But to answer your question, how we did it, it's audience. We knew exactly who the show was for. We knew what tropes they liked. We knew what kind of representation they wanted to see in the cast. We knew what moments would get their attention in the trailer. We knew what music they were listening to. We knew what hashtags to use. We just knew that teenage girl inside and out. And I think that really helped us. It's almost like you're trying to narrow in on the target and we got it right in the middle.
Everything you've just talked us through there, to the length, knowing the audience, the strategy of how you did it, the beginning of the clips, are they all still winning strategies when you're on TikTok, or have things moved on?
I think they're all pretty much the same kind of strategies that we recommend to a lot of creators these days. Whether it's a scripted web series or a unscripted variety show they want to do, I still think those first few seconds are paramount. I still think knowing the tools of TikTok, whether it's using the songs or if it's using green screens or filters or stitching or duets, like all the various products that TikTok has. Even live streaming now is becoming a big one on TikTok as a product feature. So I still think it's those central things. And like the first and foremost is like, who is this for? Because if you can answer who's going to like this, it kind of helps you with your next question as a creative and where you're trying to shape it. Does this already exist for this audience? Can they get this somewhere else? Okay, if they can get it somewhere else, why should they watch your version of it? Why should they consume what you're doing? to my earlier point, there's so much content out there that you don't really want to do the exact same thing as someone else because they're going to get that itch scratched somewhere else. So you need a little something about what you're doing that's a little different.
Do you consciously sit down with them and say, who's your audience? And what kind of answers be like, oh yeah, this is a teenage audience, or this, is it general? Is it specific? Can you give us some insights into how you actually build that conscious audience focus with your creators?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I love sitting down with the Amplify roster and talking to all of our creators. And I do it all the time. They're on a real spectrum of where they're at in that journey. For example, a content creator I've worked with many times over the years is named All Right Hey, real name Matt or Matthew. So I worked with Matt on his podcast, on his live touring shows, on various productions. And Matt has been doing this for 10 years, 10 years plus. He went viral on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. He's been around the block. I don't need to tell him who his audience is. He knows what they like. He knows what their favorite cocktail is. He knows what books they're reading. And he uses that to inform his content. And one thing that Matt does really well is he's very reactive to what his audience tell him when they're saying, we like this. So for example, he started a journey last year of, I think, like wanting to read 50 books in a year. And he documented the books that he was reading. And he brought his audience on that journey. So when he said he read so-and-so book, he would put on his Instagram, what book should I read next? Oh, here's 50 suggestions. Great. I'll read that one. And then he would go on and say, I hated it. And they're like, what do you mean? And then sparking a new conversation because he's trying to kind of rile them up at the same time. And then you can get a creator who's maybe 19 and they've gone viral and they've been doing this for 6 months and they haven't even gone to university yet. So they may be like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. My audience are women. And I'm like, cool, women. That's a starting place. Let's go a little deeper. So you try and ask them questions around themselves first. What do you like to do on the weekends? What movies do you watch? What music do you like? What concerts have you been to? Okay, do you think your followers feel the same way? What are your followers talking about? What comments are they leaving on your videos? You're just encouraging them to think a little deeper about what's going on behind the scenes of their followers. So it's a real spectrum of like how we help people. But I think that's one thing that people need to remember with the creator economy and creators specifically is that they can be really new to this business, super new to the entertainment industry, and they can often leave themselves open to a lot of vulnerabilities. So our job as their managers, or I'm not a manager, but Amplify's role is to really protect creators.
I heard a term recently that I really like, that we're in a time of participatory media. And that I think that means everything from listening to the comments to virtual reality and immersive. But that relationship of them actually feeling that they have a connection to those creators is really key to building that audience over time, isn't it?
100%. Cannot emphasize this enough. The classic example I use is that I've seen creators who have tens of millions of followers not be able to sell 5 items of merchandise. Whereas I've seen creators who maybe have 100,000 followers sell 400 items of merchandise. The following number does not mean a lot to me personally as a producer, as a creative director, whatever. I don't care about the followers too much. I really care about engagement rate is obviously the top line statistic that we look like. So what's the relative following to engagement? And that's an easy stat that a lot of tools can pump out for you. As of time of recording, the TikTok went dark for 14 hours in the end? Whole other conversation. But that really, I think, reminded a lot of creators about the importance of diversification. You're making sure that they're talking to their audience in a lot of different ways and not being reliant on one way, which is why when you have creators who have a podcast and then they have Instagram and then they maybe have a Substack, maybe they have a Discord, then they also have live streaming and then they go on tours and then they sell you merchandise. You've had a lot of touch points with that person before you've even come to present them with the product, which is like one of our creators, Kat Clark, has done that really well. She has a channel where she posts on TikTok every day, minimum once a day, every day for the past 5 years. She's a very consistent creator. Then we helped her build her podcast. Okay, now she's talking to her audience twice a week for 35 minutes. Okay, now she's going on live stream. She's live streaming once a week for 3 hours while she cooks dinner. And then she launched her skincare brand. So there was a lot of points of contact before you got to the stage of, okay, here's my brand and here's why you should buy it.
I love that idea of multiple points of contact. And I think in this really crowded media landscape, that's something that we really need to look at, particularly in the television and film industry. I've been long saying that the build it and they will come, where you don't tell anyone about your show and then suddenly put up a billboard a couple of weeks before it goes to air and expect people to come. That is not cutting through when you're up against creators, as you're talking about, that are talking consistently to people every day. Let's talk about that television industry and what it can learn from what you're seeing on the front line and with the generations you're talking to. You've been known to say that people aren't watching less TV, but they're watching it differently. What do you mean about that?
It's something I hear all the time, which is people aren't watching TV. I'm like, are you seeing the same thing I am? I'm like, shows are getting like higher streaming numbers than ever on those larger platforms. Okay, people are not watching appointment viewing TV necessarily on free-to-air television, which we all know. We've seen those numbers suffer. We've seen the ad spend suffer, and those dollars have been pivoted a lot of the time. But I don't think people are watching less TV. I think they're just watching in many different ways. I went to VidCon last year in Anaheim, and there was a lot of talk about, they call it connected TV, so like YouTube connected to TV. A huge percentage of YouTube consumption hours are actually on connected TVs. So people are sitting down, they feel like they're watching TV, but they're watching YouTube. They're not watching Netflix or free to air, but they're watching hundreds of hours of content on their TV on YouTube. That even already is like a point of difference to me, is really quite interesting. I've also seen a really fascinating swing back towards week-to-week viewing. I've seen a lot of discourse from Gen Z in particular around really enjoying week-on-week viewing experiences. So when shows like House of the Dragon or The Last of Us are being rolled out, or Euphoria, there's this great, amazing conversation happening online every single week about what's going to happen next and what's your theory and all that exciting stuff. Because binge culture now, you kind of watch a whole show and then 2 days later, you've forgotten everything that happened. It almost like cheapens the experience a little bit, even though it's exciting to have it all at once. We're now living in a time where you have everything all at once. Everything. Any part of human history forever, all at once. These kids now, they've had access to everything everywhere all at once for their entire lives. So there's actually something exciting about the curated experience or the week at a time experience. Or now we're seeing fast TV streaming services where you don't get to choose what you watch. You watch what we tell you to watch at 2:00. They're like, what a gimmick. It's never going to be sit down TV remote channel 9, 10 or 7. That is over, I think, sadly. But it's still TV being consumed. It's just not in that way anymore.
And let's just dig down into that a bit, this idea of retro TV or TV being TV again. There's still a two-strand approach to getting that audience. Yes, we drop the big episodes, but we're going to have a conversation with you all week as well.
Absolutely. And the platforms, the studios, they're making those conversations happen on purpose. So that's a great example of a typical creator campaign during the release of a show. They will pay creators to talk about the episodes week on week. One trend that I personally love, because it suits the content that I like, is a companion podcast. I absolutely love companion podcasts. I listen to them all the time. HBO did an excellent one for The Last of Us that I really enjoyed. And I think that idea of, again, like more in-depth knowledge, more behind the scenes, more content. So like your touch points with a show like The Last of Us is everything from like Pedro Pascal doing a press tour through to the studio doing an official podcast with the showrunner, through to hundreds of creators being paid to talk about the show as well. So it's going through a lot of touch points. It's definitely not just like a billboard or that idea of going on the Oprah show or going on Ellen. Those shows are now digital shows. It's Chicken Shop Date and it's Hot Ones, and it's all these different kind of digital verticals that people now have to go on as part of that press tour. There's multiple touch points online for films and TVs that are being released.
Is there a generational divide happening in screen entertainment?
I'm biased, but probably. I think there probably is a bit of a divide, but I'm sure the previous generation would have said that about the generation before them as well. I think what's just really difficult now is that everything moves really fast. Like I was saying to you, yeah, TikTok 5 years ago, short form, and now 5 years later, I'm like, it's already back about long form. And maybe 2 years from now, it's all going to be about live streaming, which I think it is. I think Netflix's recent investment in their live streaming tools and the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight to me was really fascinating. Clearly, they're going for live as a key pillar. It's all changing all the time. If you're a traditional commissioner, by the time you get it, it's already different. It's change and growth and future. So while there might be generational divide, the solution being a bunch of people who are in their 50s and 60s have to figure out how to do a TikTok trend, I don't think that's the case. I think they just have to be willing and open to listen to younger producers who can maybe help them and say, this is how you employ these tools.
Evan Shapiro, who's a great thinker on all these things, said that if you don't have people in your team who are under 30, you're going to miss the future. And I think what I hear in that too is that we all need to keep growing and learning. The world's really starting to look to Gen Z as they rise up as an audience. Gen Z are now aged 13 to 28. They're not the kids anymore, and they're increasingly the ones who are going to be deciding what media comes into homes, so having a financial impact in terms of where eyeballs go. What can you tell us about that generation's viewing habits and priorities?
I've always felt that they're very platform agnostic. They just don't care where it's coming from. I think that's a really key thing that brands need to know, that the commissioners and the studios need to understand, is they don't love Netflix. They don't love Paramount. They will pay the subscription fee because they like the content, the intellectual property, the actors, whatever it is about it they like. That's where they're going. So I think it's quite interesting to point that out, because if there's one thing we've learned with the TikTok ban is that they do love TikTok. They love what TikTok means to them. And I think that's because they are TikTok. They are on the platform making videos, talking, engaging, shaping the culture. TikTok is a two-way conversation platform. Streaming platforms are a one-way conversation. The streaming platform gives you the entertainment. That's the end of the interaction. TikTok is a lot more involved and evolving in that way. You're giving and taking when you're on that platform, whether it's even just like a simple comment section. Streaming platforms don't have comment sections. It's a one-way conversation. I just think that's an interesting thing for people to know, is that this generation, they're really just driven by what they like, and they're really driven by talent. And when I say talent, I mean creators as well. I just don't understand why this is not happening more, is putting those creators into important roles within these programs, whether they're unscripted or scripted, long or short form, box office, cinema release, or streaming. Creators should be much more involved in those deals and in that work. And I don't just mean as actors, I mean as producers, as writers, as directors.
Let's dig into that a little bit more. What opportunities is traditional media missing for Gen Z audiences right now?
I do think that's number one. I have certainly made several pitches over the years around, we should make this show around this creator, and here's the reason why. And I've gotten a lot of no's, which is totally fine. There's a lot of reasons why you get a no. It's not just because it's a creator-led program. But at the end of the day, if your goal is user acquisition, you want people to sign up to your platform, and then user retention, you want them to stay. And I'm saying, okay, I've got a creator here who has 10 million followers. They have converted 200,000 people to a podcast. They have sold 10,000 units of merchandise. Yeah, I think they can get someone to pay $6 to subscribe to your streaming platform. And I think they'll watch the show, and then I think they'll go on to watch other shows on your platform. The project still has to be good, obviously. You can't just call it in because the creator is in it. But like example of how we've done this at Amplify before, that worked really well. We did an Audible original drama at the end of last year called Sounds Like You. It was not a screen project, but it was scripted. And our pitch to Audible as to like why they should use Amplify and why they should commission this project was, we'll use creators as the voices of the male and female lead, but we'll go one step further. We will build them into the marketing plan for this project. So you're not just going to whack them on the cover art and say that they're in the show. We're going to leverage their audiences. We're going to leverage their previous experience in the audio space. And we're going to help them promote the show really authentically. So we cast Georgia Productions. Georgia is one of Australia's most famous YouTubers. She's a legacy creator as well. She's been around for almost 10 years. I used to produce her podcast for 3 years called G Fangs. So I knew that she had done audio before. She can convert an audience to another platform to listen to something because I had done it with her Spotify original show. And she wanted to get into acting. She had never acted before. I was like, okay, that ticks a lot of boxes. And she's a 23-year-old woman. And then we had Oliver Mills. Oliver was like this new guy on the block. He's only been a creator for 12 months. And he was involved in like a big viral TikTok story that was globally viral that happened off the back of an Audible campaign. So he actually did a paid campaign with Audible to market the platform, which led to a really fun, exciting, viral story that happened. It was like a romantic triangle. It's a long story, but anyway. So I'm like, okay, I got a young guy here, also wants to act, new on the blog. He's pretty cute. He wants to do all this stuff, and he's associated with Audible. Bring him together with a legacy creator who I know can convert, who wants to act, who I've worked with before. This feels like a great partnership. So we brought the two of them together, and they were great. Firstly, they auditioned. They didn't just get the role. They had to audition. They both can act. And when we recorded the show, we filmed all the behind the scenes of them doing it. So we recorded basically 80% of them recording this audiobook. And we used that footage to cut down into little social media highlights for Audible to use on their channels, but for Georgia and Oliver to use on their channels as well. Georgia's got like 1.8 million followers on TikTok, 400,000 followers on Instagram, and Oliver likewise has, I think, like 1.2 million on TikTok and 200 on Instagram. But we even went one step further. Okay, them recording the show, sure, that's easy content. We did behind the scenes of them on their photo shoot. So we did a photo shoot of them doing the cover art for this, and we did like cute little interactions of them doing the photo shoot. We got them to do like reacting to my voice, reading a sex scene in a book, because there's like a sex scene in the book. And George's was famous as a teenager, and now she's a grown woman. So she's like, oh, I'm doing something mature and racy. I'm going to listen to me read out a kissing scene. Oh, how scandalous. So we came up with really platform native ideas to help the creators promote it. And then we went even one step further because we're Amplify. We did a creator campaign for it as well. So we built in a broader creator campaign to promote Sounds Like You, where we engaged book talk creators, lifestyle creators. The creator I mentioned earlier, All Right Hey, Matt, who reads a lot of books, he made a video about it. And he's friends with Georgia, and everyone knows that him and Georgia know each other. So it was like him listening to Georgia do a spicy scene, and oh, how great is that? So we were able to do this real top to bottom marketing campaign designed entirely around creators, all the way from voice acting to behind the scenes to working with creators in the book talk vertical to build this like really robust top to bottom approach. It was the first time Audible in Australia had ever worked with creators as voice talent. So they had done creator campaigns before, but they'd never cast creators in a book. And I can't share the full stats, but it massively outperformed Audible's benchmarks, their social benchmarks. So tick. Everyone's happy, everyone wins. And Georgia and Oliver got to do acting, real acting. Now they have a show reel. Now they have their first credits, and they're both managed by Amplify. That's one where it's like everybody won in that scenario, and we got to do a really fun project.
I do think that it is interesting to connect the dots here and go, what is the opportunity and learning in that for Australian producers who haven't yet done that, who work in film and television or even in the online space? Like, where are there opportunities to elevate and grow audiences through this kind of collaboration?
Honestly, now the Australian creator market is a little more mature than it was a few years ago. There's a lot of talent managers out there, a lot of agencies. So creators these days in Australia, they all have agents. So you can just reach out to their agent and be like, hey, I want to know about your roster. I want to know who's interested in acting, who's interested in maybe presenting. Like, we represent a lot of excellent hosts and MCs as well at Amplify. So it doesn't even have to be for opportunities that are like acting. It could be, we want to do a show where we do behind the scenes or an after dark version of Love Island or something. We might have a talent who'd be a great host for that. But if you're looking to engage with a creator in a more in-depth way where they're becoming part of your creative process, part of a show or a series or something, I would just say actually sit down and watch a YouTube video or a TikTok or listen to an episode of their podcast and make sure that you like the work. Actually sitting down, talking to managers, watching their content, like step one, and then hopefully talking to people like myself. We have a slate of projects in development ready to go that we would love to be taking to market with creators.
For anyone in that point wanting to start using their voice on social platforms and coming into that creation business right now, what advice do you have for them?
If you're wanting to get your voice out there and maybe start to make some content for different platforms, there's no better time like the present. You should just start doing that. And my usual recommendation to people who are interested in that is to really lock in on, again, who are you trying to talk to? Just shoot it on your phone. You can get like a Rode mic, wireless go, super easy, cheap. You don't need to have a really slick setup anymore. It can just be like a phone video that you shoot and edit in 1 hour and post it on LinkedIn or TikTok or whatever. You do not need to have a glossy, polished product. It can be pretty rough.
Michelle, it's so brilliant to talk to you. I love the way you think. I love the way that you're pushing boundaries and the way that you can articulate the future of things. I'd like to end with one big question. If you could pitch one big idea to change the future or shape the future, what would your What would your big idea be?
Make more young adults content. It performs well commercially. It can perform well critically. It can be fun to make. It's cheap to make. People want it. There's a demand for it in every way, shape, and form. And we just do not do enough teen content in this country. I don't know why. It boggles my mind. That's where I think there's maybe a generational divide in valuing teen audiences. They're extremely motivated. They have nothing better to do besides watch your content over and over and make fan edits and buy tickets and buy merchandise and whatever. So I think like my big idea is let's make the next Looking for Alibrandi. That's my big pitch.
I love that. And I actually think it's really clever because I think that the under 40 audience have been so poorly served globally, which is why they've gone and found their own content on their own platforms. And I think if we want to build our stories across Australia or across the globe moving forward, we need to find ways to build those and repair those relationships and feed those pipelines moving forward.
Like you've got shows like Elite, which I think is a Spanish show. You've got shows like Young Royals, Heartstopper. These are all international shows in some way, and they've traveled extremely well globally. This vertical of young adult content does really well internationally, regardless of language or genre. That could be a thriller, it could be a romance, it could be political drama, whatever. It does well across multiple cultures. So if we make a really Australian YA piece of content, we can see we'll do well internationally. So it's not even just like selfishly for Aussies. I want more Aussies to see Australian stuff. I think people in Europe, people in Asia will find it interesting to see what the Australian teen experience looks like.
And we've seen some of that in Heartbreak High, which has been a great global success.
100%. I think Heartbreak High is like that first step that's been taken, which is fantastic. And then I think the next step for me is even like, let's just make a pure romantic comedy. Let's make To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Let's let people kiss and fall in love. It can be as easy as that. I love Heartbreak High. It's great to see that kind of stuff. But it's like a gritty show. It's like a Euphoria-esque kind of dark show. Sometimes I just want to watch my romantic comedy. I want to watch 10 Things I Hate About You. That's what I want. And yeah, I would love to make something like that one day.
So good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Julie.
We Interrupt This broadcast is recorded on the unceded lands of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation and the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, and we acknowledge them as the traditional custodians and first storytellers of these regions. Always was, always will be.
This episode was brought to you by Screen Vixens, Expanding Media and Crew HQ. We Interrupt This broadcast is hosted by Julie Eckersley and Kirsty Stark and produced and edited by Leonie Marsh.